tough for yourself, tough. You're so tough for yourself. You're so, you like it too.
Hello and welcome to Average Takes, where I have discussion about a specific topic with a friend. And my friend today is a wife, mother, financial expert, and amazing dom, SeaAphrodite. Thanks for coming to the podcast today.
Thank you for having
All
me.
right, so today the topic, just because you do this pretty much every day, or at least often. So I thought we could just start with Femdom, just in general. What is Femdom, and yeah, your experience of it.
Yeah. So it's so interesting, the concept of sort of female domination. I mean, we see a lot of dominant females in the world today. You see women in politics and government, and women in obviously industry and corporations. And we've done so much, I think, to level the playing field. Not that we've fully done it, but in terms of female empowerment overall. But female domination still seems to be very niche, kind of from a kink perspective or in the bedroom. And I wonder about that. I've obviously had occasion to meet with, others like me, sort of lifestyle femdoms, women who just tend dominant in the bedroom. So I know we have some commonalities as well as, some differences. But, from the perspective of what's kind of out there, you have a lot of femdom pornography, which is very inauthentic. You have a lot of professional femdoms, which is a mix of some very authentic people and some pretending for money. You have a lot of financial domination, which some of it can be authentic, but a lot of it is just sort of, again, pretending for money. And then you have a very small contingent on a relative basis of true kind of lifestyle female dominance. You have a little bit more, I think, in committed relationships sometimes, where there's a female-led relationship, but the woman then is dominant to just one partner, just her spouse, let's say.
Mhm.
And then she sort of is submissive to other males. And we'll talk about that in cuckolding. But in general, it's just interesting to me that oftentimes you don't have the extension of sort of very powerful, female personalities, very educated, very successful women. A lot of times will still default to being submissive in the bedroom. So I do wonder about this, why it's so kind of commonplace. And I have some thoughts about it. I mean, I think a lot of women just want the relief, of kind of their normal lives, where they are being quite dominant, again, let's say at work, at home, etc. They just want the relief, of not having to do that in bed. And I think a lot of women obviously enjoy penetrative sex, so they bottom. And so that's, being used in a way, right? And so that kind of receiving, right, being the kind of recipient and being the one who's penetrated also leads to, that kind of maybe more submissive posture. And I think among young women, and I hear this a lot from, my younger playmates, who are male and are looking for female dominance, and they look to older women because a lot of the younger women that are their peers, they're the same age as them, tend to be submissive, maybe from just a lack of confidence, right? Because the way we normally see female sexuality, just generally out in the world, is, where you're positioning yourself as kind of prey, and somebody comes and takes you. And so these young women, as they're trying to seek out partners, may just be positioning themselves that way rather than kind of taking charge, right? Because that's not the natural role. Plus, there's the physical difference, between men and women, right? So, guys are bigger, stronger. And so that's kind of, maybe intuitively women just sort of feel more submissive, especially younger women. So it's all of these things that kind of work against, I think, the extension of female dominance, these cultural elements, um, all of these sort of components. We still as a society are obviously sort of navigating our way through what it means to have equality between men and women and kind of empowerment of women. And, I think it's an interesting conversation to have. So I would say just femdom overall, it's obviously kind of female dominance in a sexual context, and it can take many different forms. My form is probably a fairly extreme version just because I'm dominant all the time in every situation. And obviously, a lot of women will just fall kind of somewhere on the spectrum or the range. And so, again, really interesting to explore, especially with other women who are my peers. And that's something that I've certainly been doing and kind of building a network.
On the other hand, with the men you play with, What are some of the reasons they've shared, or that from your experience you feel they are drawn to a femdom?
Yeah, I mean, this is the same thing. I think we're working through some of these things as a society. I mean, I think some men again just want the relief or the release from always being the dominant one, and kind of our culture, our society imposing that on them, that they always have to be the one in charge. They always have to be the one taking care of someone. They always have to sort of be leading, and they just want the release of that. That's, a lot of older male submissives too, may be very successful professionally, maybe in positions of power. I mean, I have playmates who are in the military and police and fire, very masculine. I mean, finance, medicine, law, a lot of, very like dominant male professions. And they, again, just want to unburden themselves in a way and kind of feel that
Mm,
release. I also think the desire to be desired. I mean, I've written about this in a certain kind of way, the way that you are desired when you're a bottom, and the focus is on you that way, and you're sort of serving someone.
mhm,
Is just a very different way, I think, of feeling desired. I talk about kind of helping men feel like sluts, right, or like feel slutty. I mean, like to feel attractive, like, I mean, pretty, maybe is the wrong word. Sometimes for some people it's the right
right.
word, but to feel desired that way, that somebody just wants to kind of like take you and use
Mhm,
you, that is something that men don't often get to feel. So I think it's just, we're a complex, human psyche is complex, right? And whether you're male, female, or anywhere on the kind of gender spectrum, because as we obviously know, there's all sorts of
mhm,
variations on gender too. I mean, everybody, like, has the right, I suppose, to explore, feeling desired in different ways, and feeling used in different ways, and again, like, kind of exploring different parts of themselves, because you have some very switchy folks, who certainly can very credibly play both roles and really enjoy both
mhm,
roles. Um, and so again, I think it's just culturally, a lot of males wanting to explore something that isn't normally offered to them. It just feels really attractive to sort of take that break from, the norms that are imposed on you, and be participating in sexuality in sort of a different way.
mm. And I guess with your experience, decade, at least more than over a decade of, or two decades of doing this, um, what like, there's some people that just see it for play or like just an outlet, versus some people that kind of leave it. Do you see any differences when with the type of playmates that you choose?
I mean, there's definitely huge differences between people who see it as play and an outlet and people who live a lifestyle in a permanent way. I'm not part of, let's say, a marriage like that, where there's a female dominant and a male submissive who are in a committed relationship for a very long time. Again, exploring things like cuckolding in that context, where you have kind of hot wife and a cuck, and then bulls who sort of enter in. But certainly that dynamic of sort of, permanent male submission is really interesting. And then you have men who do, I mean, like, again, it's not just something that they dressed up as once in a while. They begin to kind of transition into more non-binary, or, more femme presenting, sort of way. And I do have playmates like that as well. I think a lot of my playmates are characteristically traditionally masculine.
Mhm,
They typically present as masculine and they live very masculine lives. And so this is just something that they're kind of looking to do behind closed doors, which I personally really
mhm,
enjoy. But again, there's a whole spectrum, and obviously how people kind of take that, right, and internalize, right? So is it just something that you sort of put on? Is just an activity, right? And then you can walk away from it, or is it something that really becomes definitional for you? Like, you define as someone who's submissive, you define as somebody who is a sissy, right, or kind of more femme. Those are very really different, and I definitely have playmates across the spectrum.
mm. I mean, is it important to you to have just like a wide variety of playmates, or are there certain qualities that you look for in playmates as a femdom?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, it's, I like variety for sure. So part of it, I think, is this supply and demand issue, that there's so few female doms and there's so many men, boys, looking to explore that. I enjoy that process. I enjoy kind of exploring new things with someone for the first time, giving them confidence then to move on and to do it, with others in the future. But I like to be that first guide, for example. So I do tend to bias towards younger and less experienced rather than people who already know exactly what they like and have had a lot of experiences with others, and maybe they would still enjoy their time with me, but it doesn't have the same level of meaning as if you're, when you're the kind of the first person introducing someone to something, and then again giving them that comfort, that confidence, they can go off and kind of do it for however they want in the rest of their lives, right?
Mm,
So I do bias, I think, towards less experienced and younger, and having that mommy dom kind of
mhm,
role. I know a lot of doms who prefer more experienced men and older men because they kind of like that the person knows exactly what they want, and they're not going to be flaky about it. It's less likelihood they're going to get cold feet and not want to move forward, especially if you're a pro dom and you want a kind of reliable customer. But mine are not customers. Mine is just for fun. So I'm sort of less sensitive to that issue, although obviously nobody likes to be flaked on or ghosted. But I think it just comes with the territory. If you're kind of, dealing with folks who are younger and kind of less serious or less certain.
mm,
And they kind of self-select, which is fine. The ones who aren't ready, and the ones who are ready get to have the experience.
mm,
I think, like I said, for me, it has more meaning when it's something sort of new and exploratory and first time, and there's a level of kind of comfort that I can create. Than if it's someone who's had lots of these experiences with many, many people, and they just want to have it, with me as
mhm.
well. I don't feel as like it's almost like to each according to their need, which is a bit of a communist statement. But I want to kind of give it, since I have the experience, I want to give the experience where I think it's most kind of needed or valued, where it can have the most impact. That just makes me more excited personally.
Wow, this is really enlightening as always. Always chatting you opens my eyes. So I guess as on one end, I mean, do you have advice for like new femdom, someone that might be like, hey, I feel this way, or I feel that I might have such characteristics. What advice would you have for that person? And on the other end of the spectrum, not necessarily playmates you have, but people like men that might be interested in playing with a femdom. What advice would you have for them?
Yeah, for sure. So I think for women, and I do hear from a lot of women asking for advice, which is part of the reason that I've written, some of the articles, and I think podcasts like this are very helpful too, because I obviously don't have the bandwidth to sort of really advise everybody individually. I think there's a little bit of a lack of confidence in the beginning with people, and I always sort of say, like, that's okay. Like, you can be vulnerable. You should be authentic and genuine. There's a little bit of fake it till you make it. A little bit of that, right? Where you just kind of just do it. Even if you don't feel fully confident, just do it. Experiment with it. There's not a huge downside, right? There's not tremendous risk. Whoever you're playing with, whichever is the male that, let's say, you switch off with, or that you sort of dom, they're eager for you to succeed, right? They want to support you in your success. A good submissive wants their dominant to do well, right? They're supporting them. And so they're not going to be there like looking for every mistake or trying to cut you down. That'd be a really sort of toxic dynamic. They're looking for you to succeed. They want to support you. So don't feel so nervous. I think people put this on a big pedestal. Like, what if I don't do this right? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I make the wrong
Mm,
move? What if every little thing takes on so much meaning?
mm,
And it's not like that. It should be, I think, especially at the outset, you should approach it as something playful, and something joyful. And again, if you make a little mistake in something, or you want to, do something differently, you just pivot. You can laugh it off. I think, one of the things that's very, people, when they play with me for the first time, will comment that it's very hard, unless they've watched a lot of my videos, and even the videos are quite short, to realize that the atmosphere in the scene is often a lot lighter hearted than people thought. Like, we laugh a lot. I'm a joker,
mm,
and so it's gentler. I think people watch this femdom porn. It's really aggressive, intense, mostly fake, right? And then they see my pictures, and the things that we're doing are quite extreme in the photos, but the way you come to the comfort of doing those things is by having real connection and having it be more kind of human and lighthearted. You're not just beating somebody and like hurting them and ignoring them completely as a human being. There's definitely a kind of more holistic element to it, and so it's hard for that to transfer in via just video or photos, especially. And so I think that's what maybe femdoms who are younger and are trying to get up that curve don't necessarily get to see, that it's okay to be human and vulnerable, with a partner and still be the leading partner in the scene, and that you can practice this over time, and that you can choose partners who will support you and help you as you practice, and that there's no like big risk that you take by sort of messing something up. And I think for men who are seeking female dominance, I mean, I also get asked a ton for advice because there are not a lot of female dominants, just aren't, and there's a lot of men who are looking, and so the supply and demand is just completely broken. And so, look, if you're approaching a professional dom, just be respectful. She's obviously a professional. This is a career for her, and you want to show up on time. You want to be clear about what you want, and you have to understand that it is a business transaction, and that's going to feel different. So just be a good customer, I guess, in a sense, right? And a good playmate. If it's personal, then it's this, it's like any personal relationship. You want to treat that person well and with respect, and care for their time, right? If you make a commitment, you should fulfill that commitment, right? Instead of, again, kind of ghosting or not showing up. I mean, if you get cold feet, you get cold feet. I mean, everything is consensual, but you try to let people know ahead of time instead of last minute. And then when you're in the scene, again, you want to push yourself, but you also have to have your limits. And so communication is incredibly important. Always communicate. If you have trouble finding someone who is already very dominant, and this again goes to these women who want to practice, I always say try to build yourself a dom. And if you're a dom, you're building yourself up as a dom with a partner. So the build a dom concept for me is, if you're a male and you find a woman who's kinky, and she's a bit switchy and she's open-minded, and maybe she hasn't pegged anybody yet, right? But she could, and you kind of build up her confidence, and you tell her how much you enjoy these things or how excited these things make you, and she's a like good giving game, GGG kind of partner, and maybe she tries, to do it for you, just like you would try things for her in bed to make her happy. And she likes you, so she wants to try something to make you happy. And maybe she finds that she really loves it, and she actually gives her a ton of confidence. And all of a sudden, where you didn't think you had a femdom, you have one, right? I think that those things can work. And I think most femdoms were actually created that way originally because they had these types of experiences. So that's, I think, one of the kind of like mix-ups, maybe, that, women who approach me who aren't currently sort of doms think that it's hard to become a dom, or men who approach me think they have to find an existing dom who's already fully formed, when the reality is that we're all on a journey, and that actually you can be part of that journey with other people, where a woman can develop her dominant side. And if you're a male submissive, you can encourage and support and kind of feed that, tendency within her, and you can help her build it up, right? And that obviously benefits you, because then ultimately you're getting the kind of play that you're looking for. So I think let's not despair. There's the opportunity to create more of this, in our community, if there's again, that supply and demand element for it, rather than always seeking out, something that is already existent. You can sort of be part of the creation.
Wow. Very insightful, SeaAphrodite. Thanks for sharing your knowledge on Femdom, and thanks for coming to the podcast today.
Sure. Thank you.
You're so thoughtful, you're so thoughtful. You're so thoughtful, you're so. You're so. You like it too.